Look on that one. George.
Thank you, Chair. Morning all. As former Minister for AI and someone who started an AI drug discovery company, I get the power of AI. But we're all here today because we are very concerned, this House is concerned, at the disruptive effect of your platforms on democracy, on health information, on society. And with the greatest respect, I don't think the answers you're giving reflect the tone of the urgency. So I want to ask very specifically about some areas and your policies. And then secondly, given the failure of your well-intended interventions to succeed, I'd like your advice on how we should advise the House to step up the urgency that the public want to see in protecting us. So we've heard about health, and we've seen a huge wave of very, very dangerous tech platform blind-eyeism to anti-vax and all sorts of other things. I want to ask about democracy. Can you each just clearly state whether you have a policy on protecting democracy from disruption? We see state actors, Russia and others, actively supporting a social media campaign. Can I ask each of you, do you have a policy to protect democratic integrity, or do you take the view that anything goes? Let's start with Zoe.
So we have policies about election ads on ads which are aimed at ensuring that people are allowed to participate in free and fair elections.
Is that just during election time? Just during election time?
Oh, no, those policies are in place for all elections, all political advertising.
Outside of elections. So let me be specific. I was deepfaked in the autumn, as you will know, and there's no redress. There is no, certainly with the platform I'll come to in a minute, there was no statement or principle that that was a problem. They were focused, understandably, on child grooming. And so do you have a policy as a platform, not on just elections, but during the course of democracy, on serious disruption to democratic representation?
So the example that you're giving me wouldn't necessarily occur on a product like Google Search or Maps in terms of uploading that photo.
It would if somebody went to look for, I'm asking you whether you have a policy, if somebody, a state actor or an independent disruptor, posted something that fundamentally misrepresented the democratic process or a political party's views or an elected representative's views, would that be a problem for you? I mean, the answer may be no, but I'm keen to know what your answer is.
I mean, it's definitely a problem. I think for that photo in particular, I don't know exactly which photo, but if it were also reported in a news article, for example, and someone were searching for, your name and fake photo, for example, I think it would be important to return an article that is debunking that photo as fake. And so for that reason, we wouldn't necessarily remove that photo from Google Images altogether, because you would still want to find...
I just want to be clear. If somebody went to look on Google to see the video misrepresenting me, would you take the view, no, we know because he said that's a misrepresentation, so we're not going to let the search engine take them to it?
If there's a particular video that someone is searching for, if someone's searching for, your name and video, etc., we would be automatically applying our ranking treatments so that higher quality information is showing in
What
search
protection
results.
does your ranking provide to somebody who's got a piece of social media that is fundamentally, dangerously, either democratically dangerously or economically dangerously wrong, inaccurate, misleading, clearly? Do you take the view that you'll respond if somebody comes to you, or do you proactively screen against disseminating that material?
On YouTube, for example, if the video were violative, we would proactively screen and remove based on our policies.
You said violative. I didn't say violative. I'm talking about democratic disruption.
Democratic disruption from a video specifically?
Well, in my case, it was a video purporting to show me joining another party, which is a major change. I mean, it's a major disruptive democratic moment.
We would apply community guidelines that could perhaps be around misrepresentation.
What would that mean?
That means if it were uploaded on YouTube and violative, we'd be applying both classifiers to detect possible violations in videos that were uploaded. And if not found by a classifier, they could be reported. and reviewed against community guidelines and removed.
It's not working because it's still on YouTube. And let me come to the next witness.
Is the video of George crossing the floor to reform, is that violative?
I'm sorry, I would have to have
it misrepresents him.
I would have to have this.
I think your answer reveals the point that political disruption is about, it's not violative. I wasn't violated, but it is fundamentally disruptive to the democratic process. It would be the equivalent of me putting a video up saying that you have slammed your current employer as a irresponsible tech platform and you're going to join somebody else. That would be a serious misrepresentation of your position. So it's the political equivalent of that. Let me come to you, Mr. Law. What's your policy on it?
So look, I think we have a whole host of policies that guard against impact on democratic processes. Repeating our harmful misinformation policy, we prohibit inaccurate, misleading or false content that may cause significant harm to individuals or society regardless of intent. I think when the video concerning you came to light, we did sweeps on that basis and didn't necessarily find anything specific on TikTok, but I'm confident that it would be violative under that policy. We don't allow political advertising. We don't allow AI deepfakes of a public figure that is endorsing a commercial view or endorsing a political view, and we require AI content to be labelled. You talked about democratic processes as well, and obviously we have our covert influence operation integrity and authenticity policies as well that don't allow coordinated behaviour aimed at misleading users. Similar to other platforms during times of election, we'll also do additional levels of intervention, including labelling on content that is discussing election, linking to authoritative information. But I think the combination of policies there, I have looked on the platform and I've seen some commentary on your video and counter speech around it as well, which may not be inherently violative, but our policies would be aimed at preventing that kind of content.
I don't use TikTok, but had I contacted you and said this is a false, misrepresentative and politically and democratically disruptive video, would you have taken it down or blocked it had somebody been showing it?
Yes, I think I can say with a level of confidence that's
Thank you.
okay.
Mr. Fernandez.
So we have a civic integrity policy, again, that's around public processes such as elections or referenda. Sorry.
Can I just ask, is that just during the period of the election?
It's in the lead up to, yes.
Right, so are we now in the lead up to an election?
Not currently.
In this Parliament? I think not. So your point is, how long is the period before the election that this applies?
It depends, but it could be as long as 90 days.
Yeah. So in the course of a Parliament, we're outside of that period. Is there any policy that protects against serious political disinformation during a Parliament but not in an election?
So we have our deceptive identities policy, so that deals with impersonation, which we see throughout the year, and we have our synthetic and manipulated media policy, which maybe would apply in this case.
So, as I know, having been in government, having a policy and implementing and enforce it is different. When the video of me, the political disruptive video, was posted on YouTube and Facebook and then reposted on X, do you proactively take that seriously? I mean, do you do anything, or do you just have a policy if anyone asks?
Yeah, so the synthetic and manipulated media policy is a three-part test. So was the media deceptively or digitally altered in a significant way? Was it shared in a deceptive manner? And then thirdly, which I think is sort of at issue here, is does it cause widespread confusion? And so then we'll see the sort of contours of the conversation on the platform to see, are people confused about this? Is this leading to a broader impact?
Can I ask you just to define widespread confusion? Because I can tell you that for my constituents, suddenly discovering that I had apparently joined another party because of the use of a grok deepfake was very, very disruptive. But if you took a national population, you'd say, nah, it's not a big issue. How do you define the population?
We look at the conversation on X. Is this causing confusion on X? So it may be that it received a community note or that has proposed community notes. It may be that it was quote posted by you, denouncing it or disputing it.
Well, I can tell you, X went on fire with people in my constituency saying, what is going on? They use words I couldn't repeat in this committee. I mean, I'm thick-skinned, but it was seriously disruptive. Did you take any action?
I'd have to check with the teams to
the answer's
understand.
No. Thank you. Ms. Stimson.
So similar to the others, we have a number of policies that could be described as around the integrity of the democratic process. Some of those are during election periods, but others run outside of election periods consistently, and those can be around...
What's the one that runs outside of an election?
So you mentioned disinformation, so our security teams who work there to disrupt state interference, those kind of networks that are doing disinformation, fact-checking programs, the political ad library. We've talked already about the ability to scrutinize the content API, the labeling that we apply. I understand in your particular instance, I can completely sympathize with how distressing that was. You and I corresponded about that video at the time.
It wasn't, to be clear, it wasn't my distress. It was the democratic disruption in my constituency that I'm worried about. And I'm worried, frankly, about the complacency of the platforms, meaning that in the forthcoming elections in May, they could be seriously disrupted. Yeah. People could post the day before an election a video of, politically, it's the equivalent, Ms. Stimson, of you saying Facebook is a rotten company, I've been absolutely wrong, Meta is appalling to work for them. It would be a very major problem for your community, it's the equivalent. So is there any protection leading up to the elections, outside of the election period?
Yeah, so in the particular instance that you're referring to, one of the reasons, and I appreciate you may disagree with this logic, but one of the reasons that so it was labelled by us, it was labelled by our fact checkers, and it was downranked. And downranked does have a very significant impact. It can mean up to sort of 80, 90% less engagement, fewer people will see it. One of the reasons we don't always remove misinformation, so there are sort of a tiered approach. So if something, for example, said the election is on this day, not another day, or something obviously we do dial that up very close to the election and around the election. One of the reasons we left that video up but labelled it was we would never, across all of the platforms, really effectively be able to find and remove every instance. So the idea is where constituents might be encountering it, they can then see the actual correct information through the label.
Why can't you find every instance? You can find every instance of a Beatles song or whatever that needs to be copyrighted. Why can't you find every instance of George being...
There are limitations to our ability when people edit it, change it, manipulate that image. Unfortunately, there are. We are working to improve that. But the idea is that if people are encountering that video, they then see the accurate information, and that helps disseminate the fact that clearly you had not defected.
Thank you. So, Chair, I reiterate the point I made at the beginning. It feels to me as though the platforms are taking we've got a policy and, not policing actively. So I think it falls to us as parliamentarians to police. My instinct is to pass a very simple law that somebody's identity belongs to them and cannot be stolen, used, misappropriated, whatever the purpose. Not just a vulnerable child, crucial though that is, or an artist, important though that is, but every citizen, seems to me, should have a right to go to bed at night not fearing, just as you, hopefully, would go to bed at night not fearing that in the morning you're going to find a deeply damaging, disruptive and dangerous misrepresentation of you. Can I ask, you must be thinking about this risk, because your advertisers will be thinking about it. Can I ask each of you just for why you think this is not a problem, if that's your view, and if you agree it's a problem, how you would encourage us to help tackle it? Let's go back down the row.
Thank you, and I appreciate that Parliament would be thinking about tackling these difficult issues, including things like a right to publicity. I think there are different ways of addressing it depending on the different product. So under an ads policy, for example, if it were political in nature, we'd apply our various policies there. I think if it's a video of the type that you're talking about and related to an election, for example, we would require that to be labeled as AI and meet our advertising policies.
So, and I understand. You're basically repeating what you said earlier. Yeah. My question was different, which is, given that we feel that your well-intended policies are well-intended but not actually preventing the problems, how would you encourage us? I think your answer is you wouldn't. We can either legislate to ban, we can pass a law to protect identity, or we could create very serious sanctions on the platforms who have policies but don't enforce them. Mr. Law, can I ask you whether you have any advice on how we might proceed?
Look, I think in a sense the hypothetical that you're posing is reflected by many of our policies already. So we don't allow deepfakes of private individuals without their consent. From a public perspective, it has to be labelled, and as I said earlier, we don't allow commercial endorsements or political endorsements.
If somebody shows that you do, is there any sanction?
Sorry, in what sense?
Somebody shows that you haven't implemented the policy and you are allowing material that contravenes. Is there any sanction on the company?
So, I mean, look, we're obviously regulated under the OSA, which has some aspects of harm included in risk assessments, but not all. And I think that from the perspective of what you're discussing as well, the key thing for us in terms of, kind of making sure that the enforcement of what we're doing is as effective as possible is, I think, to continue to look at the whole value chain. I mentioned earlier some of the steps that we take to automatically label, and I think, bringing in more companies either side of the value chain to those conversations will be worthwhile. Thank you.